idea for the show.
I still don't know what the idea is.
It's about nothing.
Right.
Everybody's doing something. We'll do nothing.
They say, what's your show about? I say nothing.
There you go.
I think you may have something here.
Cross Coast Spice presents the League About Nothing podcast.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We have our second edition of our off-season rankings and preview going over each team. Today, we're covering the middle tier of our league. 4 teams. We're going to be covering JMC, Criddle, Judd, and Flea's teams today. We're going to do the same thing we did last time, go through everything, all the rosters, and check out how each team stacks up against the others. And we're going to be going by percentage chance to make the playoffs, according to dynastyfantasyfootball, same as we were before. So before we get into it, Al, how you doing tonight?
I'm here.
Oof, a ringing endorsement as always. Giving the people what they want. That energy right off the bat.
I'm excited to get into these teams. These are now legit playoff teams.
How dare you?
At least playoff threats. Yeah. The first group was on the outside looking in. These are teams that are legitimately playoff contenders.
The first group was highlighted by my team with a single digit percentage chance to make the playoffs. Yeah.
Right. I think that the actual 6 playoff teams will come from this group and the group that we're going to talk about after this. I'm not sure any of those first 4 are sneaking in.
That's almost assuredly correct.
I mean, I thought that Georgia Mike may have had an outside chance, a puncher's chance, but losing J.J. McCarthy and just not having any other quarterbacks, it's going to be tough for him at this point.
It's a big blow. He could theoretically address the position, and McCarthy holds enough value that he could probably fairly easily trade him for a legitimate veteran quarterback, but I don't think that really is a necessary move for him to make.
Yeah, he wasn't planning on contending this year. It was just kind of, hey, if everything breaks right, maybe you're looking at a team that could sneak into the playoffs. But I think so far everything has not gone right. So I think it kind of makes up his mind now what he's going to do this year.
Yeah.
Stick to the plan. 1 more year.
No need to rush things unless it's there's no need to rush things in any event. There's no reason for him to do that. All right. So let's get into our first team of today's episode. At a 19% chance to make the playoffs, we have JMC's team.
Yep, he's hit a little bit of a soft reset, not a full teardown, but he has shipped off a few pieces, started doing that at the end of last year when he got knocked out of the playoffs. And he's basically changed the complexion of his roster, right? He's moved on from a lot of the older guys. He's added a ton of wide receivers and a ton of depth. His team was very stars and scrubs for the history of him being in this league. It was a very stars and scrubs roster. It looks very different now. It's a much deeper team, but without obviously the high-end elite players that we're used to seeing.
It's a different look for him this year as compared to the last couple. And last year he was basically holding on to the remnants of a winning team and just seeing if he could give it one more go around. And that go around didn't end up working out. So like you said, he did the soft reset. It wasn't a full complete teardown, but there's a lot of new faces anyways.
Right. Yeah, he did make the playoffs last year after winning the year before. But yeah, this year right now, Dynasty Daddy projects him on the outside looking in, although he does not own his own first round pick. So he really doesn't have any incentive to tear it down completely. I assume he's still going to do what he can do, make small moves, and kind of still try to be competitive. If things go right, he can certainly still make the playoffs. He's got a lot of depth, and as we know in this league, depth plays.
That it does. And you said he doesn't have his own first round pick. He doesn't have any 25 picks, according to what I'm looking at right now.
That's fair. He doesn't have any of his
So it's not just that first round. We're missing first, second, third,
That's
fourth.
the important one. That's the important one.
In addition to that, he's already spent a third and a fifth in 2026. Not huge capital by any means, but he's already dipped into it a little bit. So it's possible that once you once you break that plane, once you've gone into it, it's easier to continue going into it.
Yeah, because you've already paid the dues that are
Exactly
that are owed.
All right. So let's start where we've been starting at the quarterback position. Two main quarterbacks for JMC, Brock Purdy and Will Levis. He does have Jacoby Brissett, who was named the starter in New England. Who knows how long that will last, though? So
Yeah,
I'm
guessing that's going to be a short leash for Jacoby.
I wouldn't count on having Jacoby Brissett as a third starter for the length of the season. However, it's nice depth to have at the beginning.
Right. And Jacoby's always been good in a pinch. But yeah, really the headliner is Brock Purdy and Will Levis. Will Levis was the big swing he made this offseason. Made a big bet on his guy, Will Levis. We'll see if it pays off for him.
Honestly, I kind of love to see this because he is a Titans fan. He has Will Levis now. It's fun to see him be able to root for his real life team and his fantasy team at the same time.
Yeah, it's always nice when it works out.
Yeah, and hopefully
when it doesn't work out, then you're just doubly frustrated.
Well, listen, even if the Will Levis part works out, we're pretty sure that the Treylon Burks part isn't going to work out.
Well, he does have Calvin Ridley at least, so he's still got the stack there.
Yep.
We'll get into that when we talk about his receivers.
Yeah. So Purdy obviously is a very solid fantasy option, but he's not really like a true number one for fantasy purposes. He's a very high end number two, I would say.
Yeah, I think the scheme holds him back a little. They don't have heavy volume passing wise. He's very efficient, historically efficient. So he manages to put up good points even on lower volume. But yeah, he's going to need to maintain that efficiency to be an impactful fantasy starter.
This room is basically going to live and die by, is Will Levis good?
Yep, that's a big bet.
If Will Levis is good, and good just can be, solid quarterback 2 numbers for fantasy purposes, then he'll have enough that he can get by as long as the rest of the roster is good. But if Will Levis is bad, and I'm, put bad as a, 25 or worse quarterback, and he's basically guaranteed to miss the playoffs here.
Right. Yeah, a lot of his season is going to hinge on the development of Will Levis. They're certainly putting the pieces around him. They've done what they can do, brought in an offensive-minded coach. They've revamped the offense to a more 21st century offense versus Mike Vrabel, grounded pound. They've added a bunch of weapons. They've added help with the line. I mean, it's set up for him to succeed. He looked good in the preseason, but preseason being what it is, we'll see how that translates. Yeah. But better to look good in the preseason than look bad, I guess.
Kenny Pickett last year,
right? We'll see what happens.
Just the first thing that popped into my head where a quarterback looked great in the preseason, everyone got real excited, and then
if he takes a Kenny Pickett turn to his career, then this team is going to be in trouble.
Well,
both the Titans and JMC.
The good news is that they have Mason Rudolph to fill in,
which JMC also has rostered, by the way.
Yeah, as did Kenny Pickett last year.
So he will have a starter between one of these guys.
Right. There's not a whole heck of a lot else to talk about in this QB room. Josh Dobbs, the backup in San Francisco now, so he's got
maybe.
Sure.
Or is it Brandon Allen?
Fair. He's potentially got both his handcuffs at quarterback, which will keep you afloat if something goes wrong for a week, but isn't really going to give you anything other than that.
Yeah. Well, we saw how desperate it got last year when 57 quarterbacks got injured.
Yeah, so no kidding. Record numbers of backup starting.
It hurts in a best ball to have zeros on your bench, guys that have no chance of scoring any points on a weekly basis. But it's also nice to have the insurance if things go wrong. Yeah. At least then you're not really struggling. He doesn't have the draft capital to go out and buy another quarterback unless he dips into multi-years down the line at this point. So
I would say for our setup with the depth that we have, carrying those zeros when you have a shallow quarterback bench is probably more beneficial than a lot of other things you could do with those roster spots.
Right. And we have deep enough benches that everyone's carrying zeros anyway. So
Yeah.
at least if you're carrying them at quarterback, you have a higher upside for impact.
Let's move on to the running back room. This is something that even you've never quite done. There are only 4 running backs on this roster, and none of them are starters.
Right. He went extreme. This is a 0 RB build dream right here. These guys he's got a couple of handcuffs and that's it.
Yep. It's Ray Davis, Antonio Gibson, Rasheen Ali, and Samaje Perine. That's the entire list.
Yeah. It's not a lot of options.
No.
I mean, when I go,
he's going to be getting single-digit points from probably both spots almost every week.
right, this is going to be a problem for him. Now, he has the depth at receiver to cover pretty much all the flex spots, no problem every week.
Mhm.
But yeah, he does need to have 2 running backs in there. So he's 2 of these 4 guys are going to get in every week, whether they score any points or not. He may need, if he gets out of the gates hot and looks like a true contender, then he may need to maybe work some deals and try to add to this running back room. It will be tough to compete all season with just these 4 guys.
I think you sold that one short right there. It's not tough to compete. It's impossible to compete with just these 4 guys. You can't.
Well, 3 of the 4 we know are going to have roles every week.
Yeah.
Gibson's going to play a lot in New England. Ray Davis is going to be the 2A or 2B to James Cook. We know James Cook's not going to handle 350 touches.
True.
So Davis is going to get some. We know P. Ryan is probably going to play on passing downs now in Kansas City. We've seen that be a valuable role with Jerick McKinnon over the last couple of years. So he's got guys that can score something on a weekly. He's not going to have zeros every week, but yeah, you're not going to get probably 20-point games out of these guys either.
No, almost never. But it's a long season. If things go well, he can buy into the position. Running back's one of the few that becomes available pretty quickly once people decide they're out.
Correct. There's always running backs to be had in the season.
Yep. All right. Before we get to that wide receiver room that you mentioned, I want to skip on over to the tight end room because it bears a strong resemblance to this running back room.
Yep.
There's only 3 tight ends on the roster. Jonnu Smith, Mike Gesicki, and Darnell Washington. This is the same room that we saw last year, only last year and the year before he had Travis Kelce to anchor it.
Yeah, when you have
Kelsey's
Travis
not
Kelce, you can make up for a lot of shortcomings for the rest of the room. But the fact that you have to start 2 tight ends every week and he's only rostering 3 and none of them are full-time players. I mean, none of them are projected to be starters or play maybe even 60% of the snaps. It's going to be tough to score points. I mean, there's a chance that Gesicki gets into that rotation in Cincinnati and is the pass catching guy, which we saw guys like Tanner Hudson have some good weeks last year. Jonnu Smith in Miami, they don't really use the tight end a lot, so we're probably not going to see a lot of points there. And Darnell Washington's mostly been a blocker. I know Arthur Smith loves his 2nd and 3rd tight ends, so he may end up in the end zone a couple of times, but yeah, it's going to be tough to get points from this room.
Yeah, it's pretty ugly. The good news is with the extra points for the tight end, receptions and all that, you can get a representative number at fairly little work. So,
right.
It's possible, I guess.
Yeah, it's just tough to have low end starters and no depth. Sometimes the depth in a best ball can kind of paper over. If you get a random backup tight end that gets in the end zone, there you got your starter for the week.
Well, we made the joke 20 times last year. Jonnu Smith in the lineup again. This time he scored points. It was.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough road to hoe with this tight end group and running back group if he wants to be competitive this year.
And I'm sure that he'll be on the lookout for any tight end depth that he can add. So,
Yep. Yeah, it's just tough in this league.
Everyone wants to snap it up immediately.
Every team needs tight end depth. Everyone is lacking tight end depth because the NFL is lacking impactful tight ends for fantasy. There's just not enough of them.
I don't know which. I'm the number 2 ranked tight end room. I'm good.
All right. Well, you've got plenty of tight ends. You've made that a focus of your build, which is probably a good decision in the long run because tight ends are hard to find.
Had to do something to stand out from the rest of you people because we've got teams like this one running around. Let's get to that wide receiver room where his rank is number 1.
This group is going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting on a week-to-week basis, and they're built to do that.
Jose, if you were going to pick a group to do that heavy lifting, it's this one.
He's got an elite group of receivers. One of, if not the best receiving cores in the entire league.
I'm just going to read them in the order that they're listed here on Dynasty Daddy. It's Malik Neighbors, Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, Zay Flowers, Debo Samuel, Amari Cooper, Adonai Mitchell, Calvin Ridley, Ricky Pearsall, Hollywood Brown, Curtis Samuel, Javon Baker, Rashad Bateman, Treylon Burks, and Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Yeah, you're going like 8, 9 receivers deep, and you're still looking at guys that would be wide receiver 2s on most teams.
I was going to say right down through Curtis Samuel, that's a really good list.
Yeah, this is a very deep team. So like I said, at least he's not worried about filling his flex spots with running back and tight end because that ain't going to happen. It's coming from the receivers every week. He's got a deep and talented group here.
Yeah, and obviously Malik Neighbors, Adonai Mitchell, Ricky Pearsall, some rookie, and Javon Baker, some rookies in there. Then you got guys like Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, and Zay Flowers who are still relatively young. A couple of vets like Cooper and Debo, but
this was a point of emphasis for him. It's been purpose built.
Yeah,
to be this. He wanted wide receivers. He wanted young, elite wide receivers, and that's what he's reshaped his team to have. And you can see it here. The work that he's put in moving guys around has paid off in that respect.
Right. And there's guys who go for volume. There's guys who go for deep shots. He's got a little bit of everything here. The boom bust guys. He's got the consistent guys. It's a well-constructed room.
Yep. Yeah, this is the reason that he's even got a chance of being a fringe playoff team is this group right here.
Yep. I'm jealous of this wide receiver group.
So am I. It's a good group. I mean, his, second, third flex guys are going to be scoring a lot more than most teams, which will hopefully paper over the fact that his running back 2 and tight end 2 might be 0s or 5 points on a weekly basis. But if he's outscoring him at the other flex spots, then it may be enough to balance it out. That's what he's hoping for, at least.
Yeah. Even if he ends up not winning a ton of games, I feel like his max points for are going to be pretty solid. Like he's not going to drop low enough in the standings to really miss that first round pick.
Yeah, he's as currently constructed, he's not in the bottom 4 teams. He's probably not in the top 4 teams, but he's somewhere in this middle where we're talking about fringe playoff teams. Right now, he's projected to be on the outside looking in, but I mean, you never know.
He is listed, we didn't say it before, in the frisky tier for Dynasty Daddy, which is not a true contender, but it's just below that.
Yep, and I think that's fair.
Yeah. It's just based on the shortcomings of some of the other positions that he doesn't make that strength, make that jump from frisky to contender. All right, last thing before we move on, we did touch on it briefly before, but draft capital, his rank is 10, no 25 capital at all. Most of the 26 capital and all of the 27 capital still available. He's got options if he chooses to continue to dip into the future to shore up or to tier up or, whatever he wants to do. But for next year, it's already all gone.
Yeah, he spent some capital to get some more picks in this last class, which may not have been a bad decision. It looks like it was a really good class, probably better than what we'll see 2025 or maybe any time in the near future based on how many fantasy impactful players went in the top 10 of the draft. It was just all fantasy,
just crazy,
all fantasy goodness at the top of the draft this year. I wouldn't expect that to happen again anytime soon.
Probably not.
If you're going to trade away your future picks to get into a draft, this is probably the one to do it.
Yeah.
I don't think he regrets that.
I wonder if he regrets drafting Ricky Pearsall after he got shot.
It's been an interesting offseason for Pretty Ricky. I mean, he went from looking like he was going to be the Ayuk replacement when a trade seemed inevitable to then Ayuk finally signing, pushing him down the depth chart, fighting at a shoulder injury all year, and then being shot. What?
It was a heck of a week he's had.
This guy, I would like to go look at the KTC value swings.
Oh, the
from him
minute by minute.
over the last 30 days. It looks like the Richter scale.
Yeah, probably.
It's been a tumultuous offseason for Ricky Pearsall and Ricky Pearsall's managers.
Hopefully he has a full recovery and soon, because damn.
Well, he got shot through the chest and he got released the next day from the hospital. So I guess that bodes pretty well for his recovery.
Yep. That is a pretty quick release from the hospital. That's true.
For being shot.
For being shot.
Chest. In the chest.
Man.
I saw a video of him walking himself to the ambulance.
Yeah. He looked like an arthritic geriatric, but also he just got shot and was walking. So, what can what can you say, I guess? I don't know.
Yeah, seems like he's going to be all right.
Our next highest percentage chance to make the playoffs is a fairly large jump here. JMC, I said, was at 19%. Our next team is Criddle at 58%. So this is a sizable difference. This is essentially 3-1 difference in chance to make the playoffs.
Criddle, now we're into the true contenders.
Yeah, he's the first team in the actual contender tier. Taking a look at this roster, it's a little bit different than JMC's. The strength of Criddle's roster is primarily his quarterbacks. He's got
a ridiculous quarterback room.
He's got a quarterback room to be envious of here. CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, and Kirk Cousins. Bunch of backups as well, but those are three really solid fantasy options.
He's got two guys that go in the top 5 of startup drafts. This would be a difficult quarterback room to draft in a startup.
I don't forget difficult. You'd have to mortgage half your picks to get back up into the top 5, because Hurts is going there for sure, and Stroud's probably going there.
Right now Stroud has more value on KTC than Jalen Hurts.
Sure. If you had Stroud in this league right now, would you be trying to trade him?
Yeah, I mean, his value cannot possibly be any higher than it is right now. But also he's a young, locked-in superstar quarterback. So do you really want to trade that guy?
It's true. I look at it, and every time I see this value, I'm like, man, I would just capitalize on that. But at the same time, you're going to have to tear down. I don't know. I just see the value, and I think how much of this value is actually going to be realized.
Right. We've seen this before where guys have had monster rookie or sophomore seasons and jumped right into the top 3 quarterbacks. I mean, Herbert did it, Burrow, and then
Baker Mayfield did it.
And we've also seen them immediately drop down when they don't take a next step. And mostly it's pocket guys. It's guys that are good in real life, but not the elite fantasy producers. If you don't add a running element, you got to throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns every year. It's difficult to do that, even if you're an elite player, just because, touchdown luck being what it is. And you also have to stay healthy and productive, and all the players around you have to stay healthy, and the offense has to be running on all cylinders. It's difficult for everything to go right every year. And if you fall off a little bit, you tumble in the public rankings. That's just how it works. I think he definitely deserves to be in the top 10. I don't know if he deserves to be 2 or wherever he's at right now.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't think he's likely to be the number 2 scoring quarterback this year, just based on his profile. I mean, he would need to really throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns to do that. I don't know if that's going to be in the books. I mean, they added Stephon Diggs, so they certainly set themselves up. They retained their offensive coordinator. All the big pieces are back. They upgraded at running back. They've upgraded the receiving core. So we'll see. He's set up to do it. I just think it's difficult to have that kind of elite efficiency and touchdown luck.
It's true.
On a year-to-year basis.
And he doesn't have to finish as the number 2 scorer or anything like that to retain that value either. He can, if he finishes as the number 6 scorer, he's probably not dropping much, if at all.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's tough to be in that top.
It is. It's difficult. It's difficult
without adding anything on the ground. He's not going to run for 100 yards this year.
I was going to say if he cracks triple digits, it'll be a little surprising. Although all the young guys seem to get a little bit more comfortable, it would not shock me if he scrambled for, I don't know, 15 yards a game this season. Like got 1 or 2 runs in, not like.
Yeah. Usually we see these guys run less as they go further in their career. We've seen it from guys, like Burrow, Herbert. We've seen them run less over time.
I just remember seeing him in that Georgia game.
He can do it. He just chooses not to, which
so like
it's probably better for NFL purposes.
A scramble here and there.
Fantasy.
A scramble here and there. He's never going to have design runs. A scramble here or there would get him to that, though.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I understand the sell high, and I also understand the hold because he's an elite young quarterback. Those guys are not easy to get. When you get them, you build your team around them. You don't usually trade them away.
In Criddle's spot here as well, where he's got a fairly young team and wants that anchor, it doesn't make sense to sell. Right. If you were in a different position, maybe, but he's not. He's got
position. two top 5 guys. Better just bully everyone else in the league and win the quarterback points scoring every single week against every team. It gives them a big advantage every week on a team that wants to be a playoff team.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to the running back room.
This is a running back room that's built to bully people on a weekly basis.
Yeah. Well, Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley will do that for you.
Right. I mean, that's
Christian McCaffrey alone will do that for you.
There's decent odds that he has the number 1 and number 2 overall running back scorers this season on this roster right now.
It would not shock me. I think for redraft purposes, Saquon is being slept on. For dynasty purposes, I think he's, where he should be and everything. But for redraft, I would be all over Saquon this year.
Right. I mean, would anyone be surprised if Saquon Barkley scored 15 touchdowns this year? That would not be shocking. Based on what we saw Swift do last year, Saquon is a much better overall player than DeAndre Swift.
I think that there is a fairly large contingent that thinks that the Eagles could possibly implode this year. And I'm sorry for doing this during Criddle's section here, but he's got hurt.
There's a lot of Eagles on this team.
Yeah. It's kind of the right time to have the discussion. I think a lot of people are nervous about the whole, head coach and quarterback not talking thing. There seems to be a lot of worry around the organization as a whole. So I get it, but I don't know. I just think Saquon's that good.
Yeah, he's very good. And you put him with a good offense. I mean, there's no reason for him to be worried about at all this year. From a redraft perspective, it's wheels up.
Yeah, he's protected by the rest of the offense in a way that he literally never has been in New York. So,
right, yeah, it's going to be difficult to put 11 people in the box against the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is not Tommy Cutlets. He does.
Unfortunately for him, you're right.
He does know how to throw a forward pass. So,
ouch. Before we get fully into this running back room, you mentioned zeros on the roster when we were discussing backup quarterbacks. It is worth noting that Criddle does have Sam Howell, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Kenny Pickett, Davis Mills, Skylar Thompson. There's a lot of backup quarterbacks on this roster. That's a lot of potential zeros for someone who is looking to compete.
Yeah, I don't know if it's recommended to carry that many backup quarterbacks in a best
Particularly
ball.
when only one of those is a backup for one of your guys, or I guess two. I guess Kenny Pickett is technically the Stroud backup now, or not Stroud. Sorry, the Hurts backup.
And Davis Mills.
Yeah. Well, I was counting Davis Mills as the
Yeah.
Stroud one. I kind of forgot that Kenny Pickett was
I
Philly now.
Yeah, I mean it's probably not the optimal roster construction in a best ball. In a lineup. Sure, give me all the backup quarterbacks because it's just upside. They're not
Yeah.
you're not playing them on a weekly basis. But in a best ball, you're really playing every single player on the roster every week, and whoever has the most points goes in. But when you have 7 guys that are guaranteed to have zeros most weeks, yeah, it's tough. It puts a strain on the rest of your bench.
Yep. All right, back to those running backs. We mentioned McCaffrey and Saquon. Following that up is David Montgomery.
Yeah, another running back one, David Montgomery,
in the exact same situation he was in last year
when he was a running back one.
the Jerome Ford Nick Chubb combo, which
Right, one of those guys will be a running back one most weeks, at least in the rankings. Maybe not points wise, but yeah, Ford is going to be the starter until Chubb comes back, and then it's just going to hand the baton over to Chubb.
And I mean, if Chubb takes half the season, it kind of doesn't matter because he's just got Jerome Ford to
Exactly.
take care of it. Chuba Hubbard is going to start at least the beginning of the year.
At least the first 4 games, and then you assume that Brooks is going to get eased in after that. So if Chuba gets out hot, I mean, there's no reason for them to rush Brooks or force Brooks into 20 touches a game. So
we know Brooks is going to miss at least 4 weeks. There's no guarantee he's there after those 4 weeks. It could be 6 weeks that he ends up missing.
And it would be unlikely that after 4 weeks they immediately put him into the feature role and giving him 25 touches a game.
Yeah.
So I would assume that Chuba is going to see at least half a season of starter work.
Yeah. So we're talking at least 5 starting running backs. Or we're talking at least 5 starting running backs here for the first essentially half of the year, and then.
And we know that
plus after that.
We know, I mean, Carolina has a new coach, Dave Canales, and we know that he's stubborn and he will run the ball. So Chuba's going to get volume even if he's not good. I mean, we've seen it from Rachaad White the last couple of years. He's getting a lot of touches, even if he's not effective. He's getting 20 touches a game.
Yeah.
So that plays in fantasy. I mean, I don't care about the efficiency. Give me the points.
Yeah. And the first downs will matter as well, which, those running backs tend to end up with a lot of bad first downs.
Hey, we'll take him. Points are points. He's got a couple of elite handcuffs as well with Algier sitting behind Bijan. I mean, if something happens to Bijan, you're looking at a monster role for Algier. We've already seen him be productive over the last few years in that lead role. And then Bones, potentially the Barkley handcuff.
No, we're not doing this.
Bones.
We're not doing the Bones thing.
Kenny Gainwell, for those that are not familiar with his nickname.
I thought it was Dr. McCoy. That was my very current reference right there. Yeah. I can't. Bones, get out of here. I hate all of you.
That's for you, Criddle. That's for you.
I'm done. We call the pod now. We're out. Isaiah Davis has gotten some buzz as well.
Yeah, the rest of these guys are kind of down the depth chart, but I mean, with this group that he has, he doesn't need a lot of depth. He's got it already. He's got a depth at running back 1. Never mind these fringe guys. He's not worried about them getting in there on a weekly basis.
I don't even have a single running back 1.
Right? Yeah, same.
You've got Gibbs.
Gibbs is a running back 1 in dynasty value. I don't know if he'll score like a running back 1, but we'll see.
He scored like a running back 1 last year.
That's fair.
And we just said nothing's changed for Montgomery. Well, nothing's changed for Gibbs either. So they're both going to be RB1s.
Yeah, it's hopefully going to be a good offense again. We'll get there when we discuss my team.
Yeah. All right, there's the there's the running back room. There's the quarterback room. Both pretty impressive. We're going to move on to the wide receiver room, which is a little bit less so.
Not great.
No.
This one's got some
this
work to do. He's getting his points in his flex spots from his running back room, probably not from his receivers.
Yeah, probably. This running wide receiver room highlighted by Tank Dell, Josh Palmer, Jahan Dotson. Tank Dell's good.
You left out Diami Brown and Elijah Moore.
I didn't.
Van Jefferson, the wide receiver 2 for Pittsburgh.
Van Jefferson was the wide receiver 2 for 2 different teams at different points last year in the preseason. So I'm not counting those ones. Not counting that one till it hatches right there. But Tank Dell is a good young receiver and gives him the stack with Stroud, but Tank Dell also is coming off of a pretty big injury. So we'll see if he's 100% to start the year. And
Oh, you mean the gunshot?
Tank Dell gets shot too?
He got shot this offseason as well.
How many people got shot? I meant the leg, but yeah.
He also got shot.
Yeah. That's true. Why are so many wide receivers getting shot?
It's a dangerous profession.
Spoke with the Plaxico Burress lately.
Oh, that's different. He shot himself.
Oh, what an idiot.
He was the assailant and the victim in that crime.
The best part was he went to prison.
Right. For shooting himself. To add insult to injury.
Oh man. So anyway, this room is pretty tough. There's a lot of like minor names here. Juju just re-signed with Kansas City. He had a decent year when he was there last. If he has that year again, that would
be very helpful for this room. I mean, the receiver room is the reason that he's not a like elite level contending team, because he's got it at all the other positions. It's just the wide receivers. The good news is he only has to start 2.
Yep.
So he's got enough depth. He's got like 15 guys here. So hopefully 2 of them can get him enough points every week to have a respectable score. But yeah, he's probably not getting a lot of flex points out of the receiver group this year.
If he had one more mid-tier wide receiver on here, say like a Christian Kirk type or something like that,
Right.
Just going to get you consistent points, but not, do a ton, that would do wonders for this room.
And he certainly could add to it. He's not out of options. For one, he's got running back depth to trade, but he's also got some picks when we get there.
Yeah.
So he's not completely handcuffed. It's not like he emptied the cupboards and he's got no picks for the next 3 years and he can't add anything to this roster. There's still time for him to add. He's done a good job adding. This offseason, he added Tank Dell. He added Josh Palmer. The guys that he has at the top of the depth chart are all pieces that he's added in this offseason. So clearly he knows that it needs to be addressed, and he has been addressing it. He may not be done yet.
Yeah, he's been very active on the trade market, so would not shock to see him continue to do that. All right, let's go over to the tight ends. Tight end rank of 7, highlighted by George Kittle and Dallas Goedert. Some depth pieces with Juwan Johnson, Will Dissly, Tyler Higbee coming off of injury, and the rookie Jaheim Bell.
Yeah, it says 7th, but this is actually a really good tight end group. He's got an elite player in George Kittle, a guy that could threaten for tight end 1 overall any season. He's got Dallas Goedert, who's a steady back end tight end 1 pretty much every year.
And provides the stack.
Yep. We've seen Juwan Johnson be very productive, and New Orleans is sorely lacking passing game threats behind Olave and maybe Shaheed if he can ever get healthy. So there's a good chunk of a role for Juwan to fall into again. And Higbee, when he gets healthy, has always been a consistent back end tight end 1. And Will Dissly he's going to be the starting tight end for the Chargers. He's going to be on the field a lot.
I think
they also don't have very many
there.
passing weapons.
Yeah.
So they went out and targeted him for a reason. He's going to play a lot.
I just went through a deep 14-team league that also starts 2 tight ends, and I picked up Will Dissly very late and was very happy to do so.
Yeah, he can be a starter in a 14-team start too. That's a weekly starter.
Yeah, And I picked him up in the 24th round.
In this league, he's probably going to be a weekly starter. Maybe not on this team because he's got depth, but Will Dissly would start for a lot of teams in this league.
It would not surprise me to see Will Dissly in his flex most weeks.
Yeah, it's possible. He could get some. He's probably going to get some flex points out of.
Well, I mean, he catches. If he catches, 3 balls for 30 yards, all of a sudden he's getting 8 points from his tight end spot.
Right.
He doesn't have to do a lot.
Yep, it's a low bar for entry at tight end in this league.
Exactly.
So yeah, this is definitely a contending. This is the first team we've discussed that I feel good about them potentially being a playoff team. There's obviously holes here at wide receiver, but it's a lot of strength at the other positions that can kind of paper over that.
Yep. He's almost guaranteed 2 good quarterback scores every week. And then Christian McCaffrey is giving him another quarterback level point scoring every week.
If Christian McCaffrey continues to play like he has been the last couple of years, then yeah, he's the most impactful fantasy player overall, like number 1 overall score in every scoring format. So that gives you a lot of leeway on a week-to-week basis because he's as consistent as you can possibly be. He scores a touchdown pretty much every week.
Or 100 yards every week, or both.
Usually both.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the last bit of this team, the draft capital. The draft capital rank is 9, and we are missing a little bit of the 2025 depth here. He has no first-round pick, and he does not have his own second-round pick, but Criddle does have a second-round pick. It's the second-round pick attached to Big's roster. And as those of you who are paying attention will have noted, we have not covered Big's team yet, so he's likely to be a playoff team, so it's probably a late second-round pick, but still having at least a second-round pick is useful.
Right, second-round pick can still buy you a starter in season. There'll be teams looking for picks, potentially teams with wide receivers. So I'm sure if he's contending, which he likely will be with this roster, then he may be looking to ship that pick out for more depth.
Yeah, he could easily add that wide receiver that we talked about, that wide receiver 2-3 level guy and whatnot with that pick.
There's a lot of good receivers that go for second round picks that basically worth second round picks in value. I mean, good, consistent starting receivers that can help you on a weekly basis. So.
Yeah, especially if you're willing to go up in age a little bit, to a guy that might only have a couple of years left.
Right.
He does have all of his 26 and 27 capital available. So if he really wants to go all in and sees a guy that he really likes, somebody decides to sell, he can afford to dump a couple of big picks at something too.
Yep. Yeah, I think the plan is probably to maximize the Christian McCaffrey window that he's currently in as the number 1 overall player. When you got a guy like that, you're pretty much forced to contend because he's not going to let you be bad on a week-to-week basis. So you might as well build around him.
Yeah, exactly. All right, that brings us to the end of Criddle's team. Let's move on to our next team. At a 64% chance to make the playoffs, we have Judd, or the Juddernauts, to use the formal term.
It's a formal title.
Well, I don't know. I say Judd every time, but sometimes I feel like I should give everyone their full flowers. I don't actually ever say Big Biscuits. We just say Big, So if we're talking about his alter ego here, I should just use the shorter version of that too.
Alter ego. His alt account.
Listen, until Judd joins us on the podcast, he's gonna have to put up with this.
Right, that's true. We've seen pictures, but those could be pictures of anybody.
It's true. I got no idea. AI does a lot of things.
Right, we've seen it. We've seen Big post some AI generated pictures in the chat. I still have not slept well since then.
Were you sleeping well before then is the better question.
No, I have 6 children. I don't sleep.
Yeah. Wonder what that's like. All right. So Judd's team. Let's start at the quarterback position. He's top heavy here. Joe Burrow, Jordan Love.
Right. He's got, again, 2 elite quarterbacks, guys that are going in the top 10 of startups for the most part, at least, top 10 quarterbacks. Jordan Love's come a long way from being a guy that we questioned would he stick around for a full season of starting to now he signed a big extension. He's locked in. Looks like an elite playmaker.
Yeah, this is your fault. You're the one who traded him, Jordan Love.
I did. I held him for like 16 years just to trade him away right before he was good. I have a tendency to do that.
Yeah, so he's got Jameis Winston and Drew Lock. Drew Lock and Andy Dalton, but Drew Lock was maybe possibly told he'll get a chance to start at some point this year for New York, so he could pick up a third starter towards the end of the year if the Giants struggle and they want to avoid the injury guarantees on Daniel Jones' contract.
Yeah, he's got a few outs here. I mean, if you are going to run a really thin quarterback room with just 2 locked-in starters, at least he's got some high upside backups, guys that we've seen be starters before or are behind shaky current starters, where he may luck his way into a third quarterback without having to really do anything.
Yeah, and both Jameis and Dalton have started a few games the past few years. So we'll see what happens there. But really, it's Joe Burrow, Jordan Love. They'll carry him. As long as those guys are healthy, he'll be in good shape.
Yep. And it is a super flex, so it's not a start 2 quarterback. I mean,
Yeah.
start 2, you might want some more depth, but at least in a super flex best ball, you can kind of get away with a thinner quarterback group, especially if you have elite options.
Yeah. All right. So this running back room, I find fairly interesting here. His rank is 4, but let me switch to the contender rank. I'm on the trade value rank right now. So when we switch to the contender rank, it drops to 6. He's got a bunch of young guys at the top of this room, highlighted by Jonathan Brooks and Blake Corum, the 2 rookies.
But he also has good vets. I mean,
Yeah.
Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, Raheem Mostert. These are guys that are running back 1s in redrafts.
Yeah. And a couple other interesting players, like Keaton Mitchell's going to be hurt, or is hurt right now. He's coming off a major injury, but looked solid when he was healthy last year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he'd be the Lightning to the Derrick Henry Thunder if he can get back healthy.
Yeah, he's got a lot of guys that are probably going to be in a weekly rotation, some shape or form of a timeshare. Guys like Ty Chandler, Roshan Johnson, even Alexander Madison, Pierre Strong until Chubb comes back. So he's got guys that are locked into big workloads. He's got guys that are young handcuffs, and he's got vets that are kind of in established support roles. So he's going to get a lot of points every week from this running back room.
Yeah, and then if either Corum or Brooks can get into the lead role in a, relatively timely fashion, he's all of a sudden going from a good room to a potentially great room here.
And it's not like he needs them in a timely fashion. I mean, if he gets these guys into lead roles down the stretch or in the playoffs, then forget it. This is a scary running back room.
Yep.
He's got the vets to get him there. The older guys, Kamara, Mostert.
It's a very well constructed room, I would say, for running back, because it doesn't look to me like he's spent major capital on any one of these guys, but he's got a lot of value and a lot of different ways to get points. Like you look at Kamara, he's going to catch a ton of passes. Najee Harris, he's probably going to get it done on the ground. Raheem Mostert's in that super high powered offense, scored 20 touchdowns last year. Like there's different ways to get your points in this.
It's a very deep room, probably the deepest running back room that we've seen, top to bottom. It may not be the highest end, ceiling wise, but depth wise, it's probably the deepest room.
Yeah, it's interesting, and there's a lot of bodies too. I mean, there's just a lot of guys at the bottom end as well as at the top.
Yep, it's a good room. It's a contender running back room for sure.
Yep. Let's move on to the wide receiver room. This is interesting. I want to point this out though. The QB value, QB rank 7, RB rank 4, wide receiver rank 6, draft rank 6. Just like right down the middle on all these things. The tight ends are 11, but
it's a very balanced team.
It's a very I was gonna say it's very balanced, and I think that because of how balanced it is, it kind of lifts his floor a little bit.
Right. And it's very balanced age-wise. He's not heavily skewed towards vets. He's not heavily skewed towards rookies. He's kind of just right in the middle. And that's kind of where he projects in the standings. But teams like this, I mean, all he's got to do is get into the playoffs. And, he's got ceiling guys that can score big. It only takes a couple of hot weeks to win it all. This is definitely a team that will contend for a playoff spot.
All right. So these wide receivers, he's pretty top heavy here. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Garrett Wilson at the very top. And then what I would classify as a pretty significant drop off to Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk, Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett. Now those guys are all solid options, but they're
drop
not.
Off in fantasy value, yes, but points wise, I mean, these guys they're wide receiver twos.
Oh yeah, no, they're all good players, but you're talking top five wide receivers and startups for St. Brown and Wilson.
Well, Godwin, Kirk, Allen, Lockett, these are guys that are past the age apex.
They're bringing his age up.
Right. They're past the apex where people want to overpay without the production. These are guys that are now more productive than they're worth on the trade market. So these are guys that you want on your team if you're planning on contending and not trying to flip a bunch of guys for value.
Yeah. So having Amon-Ra St. Brown and Garrett Wilson at the top gives him a very solid floor. And then the rest of these guys are going to fill in flex spots, but with those running backs, they're not going to need to fill in all that many flex spots on a weekly basis.
Right. We'll probably see Judd have quite a few weeks where he's got, the highest scoring player who wasn't in a starting lineup because he's got so much depth between the two spots, which is good. That's what you want in a best ball. I mean, depth plays. We keep saying it, but it's true.
Yeah, it does. All right, so the bottom end of this wide receiver room, a couple of young guys, couple of old guys, couple of just kind of missed guys. Adam Thielen, who I think caught a ton of passes last year, so he'll probably make some more appearances in the lineup this year. Bo Melton, Calvin Austin, Darius Slayton, Tyquan Thornton, Charlie Jones.
I mean, some of these guys are going to start. Thielen's going to be an every down player. Slayton's probably going to start and play the majority of the snaps. I'm sure Hyatt will mix in, but he's going to be one of the outside guys. Same with Thornton. I mean, until Bourne comes back, Thornton looks like he's going to be locked in as one of the top three receivers. Better for worse. I don't know that he's going to be productive, but he's going to be on the field. There's always a chance to score points if you're out there.
I don't know. If he's out there as he's out there as the wide receiver 3. I don't think he's going to be, though. I think you're going to see.
Well, they refuse to play Pop anywhere but the slot.
I know,
they will only play Douglas in the slot. They will not play him. They have not played him anywhere outside. So whether by scheme or design, that seems to be where they've pigeonholed him. For better or for worse, they need two guys on the outside. Yeah, fair. But I mean, there's been small guys who have played on the outside successfully.
You're going to see Polk and Osborne, I think.
That's the beginning of the season. Yeah, you're going to see Osborne, you're going to see Polk, and I think you're going to see a lot of Tyquan Thornton.
Yeah, he played a decent amount in the preseason, so he's still fast. We know that.
Right. Hey, I mean, if you got a guy out there that's just going to run wind sprints, try to take the top off the defense, like your guy Alec Pierce.
Hey,
I mean, he's about as good as it gets. He's one of the fastest guys in the league.
Cardio Kings. Yeah, well, it's enough Tyquan Thornton talk. Let's move on.
Any amount of Tyquan Thornton talk is too much.
All right, so that's the wide receiver room. Good depth, nice starters at the very top. It'll get it done. All right, the tight end room, rank of 11. This is where he being Judd has a little bit of work to do.
I actually think this is a sneaky good tight end room. I know that it's ranked towards the bottom, but I think
that's because Dynasty Daddy gives literally zero value to Taysom Hill, which I don't understand.
I don't understand because he's going to probably be a tight end 1 this year. he somehow gets the points every year because they use him everywhere. They're going to hand him the ball. He's going to play quarterback. He's going to play out wide. He's going to play tight end. He's going to be on the field and he's going to score touchdowns.
Yeah. So he gets points and he will get points, but he doesn't really take advantage of like the tight end premium scoring because he doesn't catch very many passes. Most of his
Right.
points are done other ways.
Right.
So
But any points from tight
no,
end
no,
are
he's
helpful in
still
this
gonna
league.
get points. He's just gonna get them in a different way. So
Right.
let's say he's got Taysom Hill, he's got Cade Otton, Dawson Knox, and Hayden Hurst.
Right.
So
On's an every down player. He's going to have opportunities. He's just kind of he's a tight end too, but
Yeah.
it gives you a great floor because every week he's going to do something enough to get in your lineup in one of the tight end spots. Knox plays a lot for a backup tight end. Him and Kincaid work kind of in tandem. And then Hayden Hurst. I mean, again, the Chargers signed Hurst and Disley.
we talked about Disley before. It could be Hurst.
Could be Hurst instead.
Yeah.
It could be Hurst that plays, on a every down basis on a team that needs receiving threats.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that this tight end room ends up being in the top half of the league points wise, even if it's not in the top half rank wise, value wise.
It's true. Hurst, not that Disley has been a paragon of health, but Hurst basically misses a few games every year as well. So
Right.
if he can be the healthier of the two options, maybe he catches 50 balls. And if he catches 50 balls, then he's going to be a good tight end.
Yeah, he's got a chance to be a back end tight end one if he can catch 50 passes. The bar is not high for these guys.
Yeah, you go back 2022, the year he was with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, he caught, I think, 52 passes and ended up, and it was a mid-range or a high-end tight end too. I think it was like 14 or something like that. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. We're not far removed from it.
It's very valuable, very valuable in this league.
Very. Yeah. And you don't have to guess when it's going to happen. It's just, if it
Right.
happens, he's in. I said it before, the draft rank, number 6, Judd has all his own picks.
Right.
It's
That's
traded
it.
none.
He's got all of his picks as usual.
There's always one. He's right down the middle here.
He has traded a few picks around.
Yeah.
Over
Well,
the last
last
few
year
years.
he traded preseason with you, got Jordan Love.
Judd is not a prolific trader, but the trades he has made have been very impactful. So he definitely picks his spots well.
Yeah. Well, we've seen him use his first round pick. He traded his first round pick for Keenan Allen before Keenan Allen's best year ever.
Right.
That was for the playoff push the year before, but still it worked out well the next year. And then obviously the first round pick for Jordan Love last year worked out
Worked out
could not have
wonderfully.
worked out better.
Yeah. So he's definitely made a big impact even on low volume trading wise.
So hopefully he pops back in, drops a fun trade for us to review, and then disappears for 6 months.
All
really.
I know is that this dude makes the playoffs every year.
Every year
That's
he's consistent.
as can be, and he's built his roster to be a contender again this year.
Judd, we look forward to your appearance on the podcast in 2046. Our next team with an 81% chance to make the playoffs is Flea, or Flea Flickers, I should say. Is it the Flea Flicker? I think it's just Flea Flickers. I should know this by now.
It's just flea flickers.
That's what I thought. The Juddernauts had me screwed up there. People's these complicated names. Anyway, it's Flea's team. Flea, the big
Complicated
salad, 81% chance to make the playoffs. She's got a good team. Let's get into it. Quarterbacks, number 8 rank. Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Sam Darnold, Derek Carr, and Gardner Minshew. That's a lot
She's
of
got
starters right there.
5 starting quarterbacks. That's a lot.
I did not realize she had 5 until I was halfway through that list.
Yeah, it's a deep starting quarterback room.
That is the most that can be said for the bottom half of that group, though.
They are starters for now.
Yeah.
I mean, she's got locked in, high end guys like Dak and Stafford, but Darnold, Carr, and Minshew are starters for now.
It's interesting. Dak and Stafford were both on my roster like 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. Flea took my quarterbacks. What a jerk.
I'm
it's
pretty sure you had something to do with that.
just a little bit. That's okay.
Dak was also on my roster for a while.
I was going to say it's actually kind of amusing the way that the quarterbacks trickle from your roster to mine and then to hers and back and forth, because you look at the reverse journey of Dak Prescott and Anthony Richardson.
Listen, a lot of players have been on my roster. I've made a lot of trades over the years.
Well, it was just
Half the
Dak-
league has been on my roster at some point.
well, I don't remember. Who did you get Dak from? Did you
I
trade?
drafted him in the startup.
Did you? Okay. Because it was
He was my first round pick.
it was the Trey Lance for Dak, then you flipped Lance the other way, and then I flipped Dak this way and got back Richardson, then flipped Richardson back to you. It's just been like a 3 or 4 person
Musical chairs.
musical chairs at quarterback, and it's just amusing to me. But anyway, she doesn't have the like big name dynasty quarterback, but Dak scored like he was last year. He was incredible, especially down the stretch and in the playoffs. He was phenomenal.
He was
it
elite
doesn't-
last year.
And they didn't add any running backs. They run, so like
It's
he's
going to
just-
go through Dak again. They're going to
it's
live or
gonna
die.
be the same story again this year.
Live or die on Dak's shoulders, even though they refused to sign him to an extension. Their team is utterly reliant on him having another monster season if they want to be competitive.
So her quarterback rank is 8, but this is a plenty good enough room. It's just
Right.
not going to hold the dynasty value that it,
On a redraft, you don't want to have this many guys that you got to pick between that are all kind of the same. But
Yeah.
in a best ball, this is ideal. You just stick as many guys out there as you can, and you're just going to get the best 2 scores every week.
well, and also this having 5 guys like that, she can always go out and trade Carr, Darnold, Minshew. They're probably all pretty close in value across the league. She can go trade one of those guys to shore up another position if she ends up running into trouble somewhere along the way.
Yep.
Right now she's in pretty good shape everywhere, but if she needs to, she can utilize that depth.
Yep.
All right, so
Good position to be in.
let's move over to that running back room. Criddle has some competition here for the for the running back room.
We were talking about elite running back
So that-
rooms. Here's the other one.
Yeah, well, I don't know what it is about this middle tier. You guys all seem to have scary running backs. I would not want to face any of these as redraft teams. She has Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, Jalen Warren. Jesus, that's ugly.
It would be difficult to build this running back room in a redraft.
You could do it. You could do that in an auction format. You could
Right.
not do this
If you had no other players on
in
your
a
team,
snake draft. You
yes.
couldn't do it.
No, it's impossible. So yeah, it's a very good running back room. And if you want to be a playoff team, you got to have points from your running backs. That won't be a problem for Flea.
Nope, it will not. She doesn't have a ton of depth because after those guys, it drops off to backups and other
Yeah.
roles. But
She's got a bunch of handcuffs here, guys that are going to have
Yeah.
some role.
oh yeah, guys that she should have that deserve to be rostered and everything, but that won't. If their situation doesn't change because of injury, they'll give her 1 or 2 weeks a year, not like a lot of other value. There's Tank Bigsby, Cam Akers, Justice Hill, Elijah Mitchell, who's unfortunately on season-ending IR, Ty Johnson, Dwayne McBride, Jeffrey Wilson. Oh God, Jeff Wilson. What are we talking about, Jeffrey?
Yeah,
there's-
a few guys that are going to get,
Yeah.
weekly points, guys that are going to be in rotations.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't expect a ton of points to come from here, barring injuries to the starters. It's mostly going to be the top 4 guys that she has,
But she'll
specifically
get-
the top 3.
She'll get her 2 starters and probably 2 flex plays out of those 4 guys almost every week.
Yeah.
So that's the RB rank of 3. I don't know if I mentioned it before. The wide receiver room, rank of 5. There's another one. It's scary. Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, Romeo Dobbs, some of the young guys here, Xavier Legette, Khalil Shakir, Josh Downs, first round trade pick, Raheed Shaheed. Had to go on that, get that one back in one more time. DeAndre Hopkins, Gabe Davis, depth pieces, A.T. Perry, Khalif Raymond, Justin Shorter, I think got cut and ended up on the practice squad. I'm not sure.
Shorter was signed by the Ravens and listed at tight end. So apparently he's making the change that big receivers do when they can't stick as NFL receivers.
Sure.
They try to become tight ends. So
Hey.
the Raiders are going to give that a shot. And if anybody needs more tight ends, it's the Raiders.
Yep, obviously. Yeah. Why would you draft a running tight end in the second round, then draft a tight end in the first round? Then, let's just try and convert one at the same time. Why not?
Yeah, I think Justin Shorter is probably a long shot. But hey, you never know. We've seen plenty of receivers convert to tight end.
Stranger
over
things
the
have
years.
happened. We just discussed Juwan Johnson a minute ago.
Juwan Johnson comes to mind immediately.
This is a good room. Tyreek Hill is still pretty much the best in the league. Mike Evans is still the most consistent in the league. If Diggs bounces back with his new team, then this is a terrifying room.
Right. It's very top heavy, and the top is old, but I mean, points wise, you're looking at some elite receivers here at the top. Tyreek Hill is the best fantasy receiver until proven otherwise. Evans is as consistent as can be. I mean, we've seen Diggs be elite. DeAndre Hopkins has been an elite player for a long, long time, but it's also balanced by this second tier of young up-and-coming guys: Dobbs, Leggett, Shakir, Downs, Shaheed. Even Gabe Davis is not old yet. A.T. Perry has a chance to be mixing in with the starters in New Orleans. They don't have a lot outside
They need some of that
there,
else
so somebody needs to emerge and play weekly snaps. I mean, it's balanced out nicely with the kind of middle tier of young guys. But yeah, her points are going to come from the old guys.
Yeah, it's
It's fine. Old points
good
count
room.
the same as young points.
yeah. They score the same. The age doesn't factor in.
They're worth the same when you're in a weekly matchup. It may not be great for your dynasty value, quote unquote, dynasty value, but for points wise, it's definitely going to be a good room.
And a couple of guys like Dobbs and Downs could serve as stabilizers. Like, they're probably not the high ceiling guys, but they're probably going to be slightly more consistent than, Raheed Shaheed, who's going to go out there and boom bust for you a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it certainly helps your flex floor. You're not going to get a bunch of zeros at flex spots with this roster. She's got more than enough depth to fill out a weekly lineup with room to spare. That raises your floor significantly. I mean, we've seen a lot of weeks where, teams that had 3 or 4 really high scoring players and lose because the back end of their bench scored 0 points or 2 points or 5 points.
Yeah.
You win a lot of weekly matchups, and you win against the median pretty much every week if you're filling out a full lineup of, double digit scorers.
You mentioned when we were just discussing Judd's roster that he was likely to have a lot of the highest scoring bench players. Last year, Flea led almost every week in the highest scoring bench player category. I remember looking at it on the weekly breakdown. She just has a lot of depth and would always have a guy on her bench scoring, 9 points, 10 points, which for a lot of teams is easily starting in that flex spot.
Yeah, there's a good chance that happens again this year, especially a quarterback with 5 starters.
That's absolutely true.
There'll be a lot of these guys on a weekly basis that would have been in, half of the other leagues lineups at quarterback too. That'll be sitting on her bench.
Over to tight end. Tight end rank of 9. She's got 2 big name starters here, Evan Ingram and Dalton Schultz. And both of these guys do something very well, which is volume.
Yeah.
Evan Ingram was a couple catches off of setting the record for tight end receptions in a year last year. I think he caught well over 100 balls. That's taking advantage of your tight end premium scoring. And Dalton Schultz, not to the same extent that Ingram does, but catches a good number of targets. He's out there. He's consistent. He's a good set of hands for the quarterback, but he's not going to go out there and score 12 touchdowns.
Yeah, this is a very good tight end room for this league. I mean, in this format, these are 2 pretty much ideal guys to have in your tight end room. Depth is a little lacking. We're not sure what we're going to get from Tremble. Parham got cut. He's on a practice squad somewhere. Oliver will play as a blocker. I mean, at least he's on the field. Tremble and Oliver will be on the field a decent amount. I don't know how much receiving we're going to get from them, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty much, thankfully she has those top two guys that are going to score consistently every week. Not going to see a lot of zeros from Ingram and Schultz. So at least she'll have those two starters every week, which is a big advantage in this league. But yeah, not a lot of depth to cover if those guys don't have big weeks.
Yeah. Or if unfortunately you get an injury. She's in good shape, but she's not in great shape at tight end.
Yep. It's definitely
And
a competitive
it's
room just with the two guys at the top.
That's the story of like the entire league, though. Nobody's in great shape at tight end.
No.
It's just that's not.
Nobody
It's
can survive.
practically impossible.
A tight end injury sinks pretty much every tight end room in this league.
Somehow, except for Big.
We'll get to his team.
Yeah. Anyway, last one to cover here. Draft capital. She has a rank of 12.
It's going to be a quick cover.
Yeah. No 25 picks, no 26 picks, all of the 27 picks intact.
Right.
So I'd imagine that she's going to use this to try and shore up in season if she has any injuries, which everybody's going to have injuries at some point. It's, where do they hit? How bad does it hit? When does it hit? If she makes it through the year mostly intact, she'll probably use them towards playoff time to buy some stuff off of the teams that thought they were contenders and ended up not.
Well, we've definitely seen that she's not shy to make a big splash and pay
Absolutely
draft
not.
picks many years into the future. She hasn't been shy about that. So when she feels like she's got a good chance to win, she's not afraid to push the chips in.
Well, she was a semifinal loss away from potentially winning the title last year. Like it wasn't, it wasn't like this team was very far off the top pace.
Yep. Different playoff matchups could have been a very different result for the finals.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good team. These four teams are all certainly contenders more than the first four were, and at least three of the four are very strong contenders. We wouldn't be surprised if any of these four made the playoffs. It would be shocking if some of these other three don't make the playoffs at this point.
I'd imagine we see, obviously it mathematically likely that two of these teams make the playoffs, and then the four teams above obviously have a higher chance, but it wouldn't shock me to see three of these teams, especially because of the way that Criddle and Judd have the ability to buy in a lot if they choose to. A lot of the teams that are above them don't have that draft capital available to spend.
Yeah, and the way that we broke it into kind of four teams in three groups was kind of arbitrary. If we're going by true playoff odds, some of these teams that we mentioned today really belong in the top group. If you're looking at playoff odds, over 80%, a lot of these teams are kind of lumped together.
Yeah.
Really should be in the same tier, especially if we look at projected wins. They're all within a win of each other, which we say, what are the odds of that happening? But we saw it last year.
Last year, yeah. Last year when it came down to
the entire league was within a game or two.
A week left, and we didn't know who was making the playoffs.
Right. So we questioned it last year, and we learned our lesson.
Yep.
It's a very tight race at the top. The top half of this league is very good rosters. And
All right.
We'll talk about the last four teams next time.
We've got four teams remaining for our next show. We won't name them now for those of you who haven't been paying attention, but I'm pretty sure you could figure it out if you thought about it for a minute. That's going to do it for us this week or this show. I don't know. We're going to end up releasing all of these in like 3 days anyways. So I say it's going to do
crossed.
it. They're going to all come out relatively close together, I think.
Fingers crossed we get them out before the season kicks off.
We've been trying. Guys, I had COVID. It's okay. Yeah. All right. So that'll do it for us today. We'll be back soon with those remaining four teams, and we'll catch everybody then.
See you in the league chat.